Hey everyone, welcome back to Big Fuzzy Works. It's Bev. Today we're going to turn this jar into a nuts for you jar. We'll learn a few techniques and hopefully have some fun. So let's just jump right in. This is the image that I actually engraved. So let me show you the steps I took to get there. So step one, I would draw a circle, and it's going to be this outer one. I measured my lid. My lid's 85 millimeters. I'm going to drag my circle out. You'll see it's wonky until I hold shift. Then I get a nice even circle. Now I hold that. Now I want to make it the right size. So I select it. I'm going to go up here, make sure I'm locked so that it's going to match horizontally and vertically. And I know it's 85 millimeters. If you're an inches person, there's just a toggle right here that will switch it over to inches. So that's the start. Now I've put mine on a tool layer, and the reason I want it on there is because I don't want a mistake and actually cut my lid. I want to make sure I'm only just using that for framing purposes. And I will show you later how I would use it to make a jig, but for now let's just get this part done. The next step I want to do is I want to get this writing in there. So I need arcs in order to get my text. Now I could just, it's small, I could actually just have my text straight across, but I like the arc look. So I'm going to show you how I would make an arc. The same situation, I would select this though. I would go Control Duplicate, Control D to duplicate, and then I'm going to drag it down. If I hold Control, it will drag from the center, and now I'm sort of going to eyeball to start with, but what I'm going to do is, before I cut this section out to make two different arcs, I'm going to put some text on here in order to see where I want it laid out. Now the reason I don't put text on the entire thing is if I started my text here, it would just I could space it and it would be upside up here, but it would be upside down on this side. So that's fine if that's what you like. If you were doing some other image that you were copying around, that would work. But as the case is, I would like to have my text like this, so I'll show you how I would do that. So next I would put some text, which in my case was nuts, V-N-U-T-S, and I chose my font earlier so it's remembered that it was a botanical flourish. We'll select it, and now that one I'm going to put on an engraving layer, and I'm going to drag it just sort of over until it will snap right to that top quadrant of this inner circle. And then I need to decide how far away. Now, the reason that I'm doing it this way, as opposed to cutting and having arcs first, is later on, if I want to adjust this, and I only have the arc, I'll show you over here. If I take this arc, and this is connected to it, and I start adjusting it, it will not adjust from the center of the circle. It will adjust from the center of my arc, this point, as opposed to down here where the center of my circle is. And you'll see that that sort of distorts it. Now, in a case of very short writing, it's pretty minimal, but the longer your writing is, the more distorted it will become, and for some people that's an uncomfortable feeling to not have it align with the edges of the lid. So I'm going to just sort of line up. What I'm trying to do right now is just align how far do I want it from the edge. I don't need to do the arc yet, but I want to know how far do I want it from the edge, and that feels like not a bad amount. If I want to adjust it, I would grab the circle, only adjusting the circle, because if I grab the word nuts in there as well, you'll see the center adjust, because the center is using the center of all the objects. So I'm going to adjust a little bit. Maybe I take it a little smaller and say I feel like that's pretty good, and then I'll just move my text again from the center point of it, and let's let it snap. And you can see the small X there I've forgotten to turn on my yellow dot for you. Let me do that really quickly. There we go. Now you should be able to see it better. So I can grab that. You'll see right in the center there, when it hovers to an X, that means it's at the quadrant, and let it go. So I feel like that's a nice distance. Once this curves a tiny bit, I'll have a decent distance. If I wanted to be very exacting, I could measure off the distance, of the circle, and, have it exactly, 3 mil or whatever I wanted. But for now, that's good. So now what I'm thinking is I want to cut out my arcs, and it's a pretty simple way to do that. Actually, there's a couple different ways, but I'll show you the way I would use. I'm just going to put a rectangle in. I'm going to go to the center of this circle, and I'm going to drag my rectangle out, again holding shift and control. Actually, I'm going to just hold control because I want it to be a rectangle, not a square. And I'm just going to drag it out, thinking this is an eyeball thing because you're just using it to trim off your circle. So that's my circle. Let me put it, or my rectangle, I'm sorry. Let me put it on a tool layer as well. So what I'm intending to do is just to edit this circle here and trim this piece out. I could try Boolean, which is when you subtract one from another. The problem with a Boolean of this nature would be that it would probably subtract the square from here, but it would fill this line in, and I don't really need that. I want to keep it as an arc. So what I will do is I'm going to convert this circle to a path, convert to path, or Control-Shift-C. Now when I go to my node editor, you'll see I have the 4 nodes. Now, I only just want to cut this piece out where this rectangle is. So if I hover roughly over the line and I hit T, it will just trim it exactly to those. And I do the same over here, hover over the line, T, trims it out. Then I just select my rectangle again, delete, and I have my 2 arcs. And that's all I need. They're exactly the same. Now if I start adjusting these, I'm going to have trouble. They're not going to match anymore. But for now, this works quite well. So next step is let's get the other set of our text, which is for you. A couple exclamation marks, make it fun. I'm going to move that to a fill layer as well, and I'm going to drag it to this bottom one. And now, how do we get it to align to the arc? Okay, well, we select our text, then we select our arc, and then under Tools, Apply Path to Text. And it's that easy. Again, you select your text, you select your arc, Tools, Apply Path to Text. Now, what's it done? It's done exactly what I didn't want to do in the first place. So how do I fix that? I don't want it to be upside down to me. I would like it to be forward. So what do? I'm going to mirror it. The easiest thing to do is to mirror just like that. It's a horizontal mirror, and it adjusts the whole thing. And essentially that just mirrored this and said, correct the direction. So we're pretty good there now. So next step, we need our little chipmunk there. So I use a little bit of AI, pull them up and let you see. I got a couple different images that I liked, and I'm going to show you how I would do a trace. These are just simple black and whites, and this is the guy I chose. Now I'll just take my image and kind of scale him down a little bit, because he has a little bit of gray in here, and I really want it to be quite clean. I'm not going to worry about the gray. Let's quickly talk about the difference between a raster and a vector. When you bring an image in, such as a JPEG or a PNG or GIF, those are image files. The files that you take your photo, those are image files. They're called a raster image, and they are made of pixels. And you'll see as I zoom in a lot of distortion, and your laser can cut those. It can engrave them okay. It will just run along and put dots of different powers. Your power would range from whatever to whatever. White would be the lowest power, black would be the strongest power, and then whatever your range is, Lightburn and your laser will calculate what this is. Is this halfway between black and white? So then it would use halfway between your power settings. And that's fine, but you'll see as I zoomed in, you can see the distortion, and you can also see as you scale it up and down, you can lose more data and more data. So your lines become not very crisp. With a vector image, let's just jump over here and take a look at our writing. This is a vector image. A vector is an SVG file. This is what Lightburn draws in. If I take a line, I make a mark, I drag, you see it makes an anchor point, and then from there I can curve, and that becomes a curve until I close it, and it becomes a shape. But the more I zoom in, you see in that line there is no distortion. And when I create a solid shape, I'm going to just delete that out of there. When it creates a solid shape like this, no distortion. Zooming in and zooming out. This is why for engraving, vectors are really nice. They're good for nice clean lines. They create an anchor point and an arc, and your laser will click and follow. Whereas in a case of a raster image like this, your laser trying to follow this will have a lot of trouble. It will be trying to do different powers and different things. So how do we get our raster image to become a vector image? There's all kinds of software that will do this in lots of different ways. You might want to adjust your image, and there's some things in Lightburn that we can do. We can adjust our image in here. You zoom in and you see the dotting we get. Depending on what settings I have, I can have various, it'll take the threshold, things like that. I can adjust the contrast, I can adjust the sharpness, the brightness, lots of different settings. Those are things that I would say play with them, learn what they do, take a little time adjusting. It can be a little bit slow, but it's pretty good, and your dots per inch matter. There's a lot more involved with this, but I'm not going to go into it all. Rather than adjusting the image in here, I'm just simply going to trace it. And because this is just a simple I'm going to right click, I'm going to hit trace image, and then you'll see it tries to approximate as close as it can to roughly where the midpoint of those colors of gray are. When you zoom in, you'll see that it goes from black all the way to white. It's going to find the midpoint of that. Some places in corners, you'll see it kind of, I don't know if you can see that really well, but it kind of arcs around. You know, that's pretty good for just a quick little engraving. It's not picking up my gray, which is good. Now you can adjust settings like the threshold. You'll see if I pull it up to threshold or I lower it down, it has a different amount that it will catch, I guess, or what it will find as a traceable amount. It defaults to the middle, I think 128. There's other settings, play with them. There's ignore, smaller than pixels, smoothness, optimizing, like a lot of different things. It's a handy thing, but I feel like the defaults often do a nice job on a simple, like a Bing AI or a Dolly AI black and white image. So I'm just going to go OK, and you'll see if I pull the image out of the way, there's my traced image. I feel like that's pretty good. If I wanted, I could go in and ungroup it all and cut out little bits of it to get really particular, but that's up to you. That's, if you want to spend the time, that's great. So now I'm just going to grab him and plunk him in the middle. Again, I'm going to sort of find the middle of my ring and put him down, and then if I hold control, I can scale him up and down in there until he sits nicely. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. One other thing you can do, and I do often, is in order to make sure I'm cutting this in the right place on my laser, let's just get rid of, we got extra copies now, so let's get rid of some of that. In order to make sure I'm cutting them in the right place, I often make a cardboard jig, and I'll show you that at the laser, but I might bring him over here, and in order to make the cardboard jig, I would take a copy of this outer layer, and I would measure, if my lid was exactly that size top and bottom, I would use this as an actual cutout for a piece of cardboard, and if it's different size, I can make a duplicate and scale it down a little bit to the size. In my case, it was a smaller lid, so I could bring it down here, put that on a cut layer, cut that out of cardboard, and then make sure I shut that layer off, and then put my lid in and engrave this. So that's really all there is to it. Let's go check out the laser, and I'll show you what it looks like when it gets engraved. We're out in the shop now. I put my cardboard down. I put some magnets on it so that I don't risk moving my jig. And I put my lid whereabouts I would like to cut it. And I moved the head to that position and adjusted it. So the lid I've just pulled out of the way. And now I want to make sure that my computer is showing exactly the same thing. So I'm going to move you over here. So here at the computer, what I've done, I've created a circle that's a little bit smaller because the bottom of the lid was smaller than the top part. So it's actually a circle of 75.5. I turned my engraving off, my fill layer off. I don't want it to output, but I do want to put it in position. So I'm going to grab all of my pieces, and in order to move them to where I put my laser head, I have a button here set up, but also it's under Arrange, and you go all the way down to Move Selected Objects and Move to Laser Position, and it will move right to where I've located my head, the head of my laser. That way, when I cut my cardboard out, I will get that. Then I will not move my cardboard. I'll put my lid in place. I'll readjust the height of the head, and then I will just begin engraving. So let's get to that. This is my second one, and I am not as happy with the way it turned out. Bamboo is notoriously inconsistent, and it kind of shows in this one where it's dark in some place and light in the other. So in order to accommodate for that, I'm going to run it a second time, but this time I'm going to change the scan angle to vertical, so the head will run in a vertical direction instead of horizontal again. So it'll go opposite the grain, and I'm hoping that will just darken it up. I'm not going to change any other settings, but we'll time lapse you through that too, and we'll see what it turns out like. Second pass done. I think it looks a lot better. I think going across the grain is probably the trick. A little bit of cleanup, and 2 passes obviously worked well, but if I wanted to do it in 1 pass, I would just, rather than, vertical takes a little bit longer for my machine anyway, so I would probably rotate this and my image on Lightburn, and I would run it horizontally to get the same effect. There's still some inconsistencies from dark going up to lighter in places, but I mean that's the nature of bamboo. You could still infill with darker, run some stain over it and wash it back off. There's lots of techniques for that, but that's it. That's what I'm calling it for today. Thank you very much for watching. Obviously, I'm fairly new to videoing and putting out YouTube videos, but if you like what you see, please comment, please like, please subscribe, please pass it on to someone. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask me. I am more than happy to help. I really enjoy it. And that's it. Thank you very much for watching. Bye now.